Hello again. We were discussing about power plant engineering, Unit 5, energy economy and environmental issues of power plants. Now we'll be discussing about pollution and waste control. We have pollutants. Pollutants are basically of mainly four types. We have CO2, particulate matter, SO2, and NOx. The CO2 are the major concern for the greenhouse gases, and they are a major contributor of from the fossil fuel power plants. And particulate matter are basically of the size of 2.5 microns, also known as PM 2.5, and they are basically responsible for the respiratory illness. And SO2 are basically the different forms of this sulfuric acid, and they can precipitate down as acid rain and leading to destruction of ecosystems. And NOx are the nitrogen oxide compounds, and they are hazardous pollutant, creating visual and respiratory problems. And when they combine with water, they form acid rain, smog, and ground ozone. And you can see from this table that different pollutants are tabled with their emissions in tons per day. You can see the amount of CO2 produced, or you can say that released in atmosphere in tons per day. So you can see that it is a very huge amount. So therefore we need to control these types of pollutants so that our atmosphere can be safe for living for all humans and animals. Now we have to control the pollutants. So we have a pollutant standards which has to be maintained by all the industries. So pollutant standard index is also known as the PSI. It is a type of air quality index which is a number used to indicate the levels of pollutants in air. And you can see here the PSI range, and it is described as a good, moderate, unhealthy, very unhealthy, and hazardous. And here the few health issues, like if we have a very good PSI, that is pollutant standard index, about 0 to 50 we have no health issues. Then for moderate we have few or none for the general population. And for unhealthy we have everyone may begin to experience health effects, and members of sensitive groups may experience more serious health effects to stay indoors. And for very unhealthy PSI, we have health warnings of emergency conditions, and the entire population is more likely to be affected. And finally we have the hazardous PSI, that is the health alert. Everyone may experience more serious health effects. Now we'll be discussing about the methods of pollution control. So the only way to eliminate the CO2 is to capture it before leaving to atmosphere. After capturing it, has to be stored permanently or sequestered. And we should switch over from fossil fuel to renewable energy sources like wind, solar, or hydro power. We have discussed about these renewable energy sources. Next, we have the much of deforestation for the setup of power plants. So we should approach for afforestation, and we should use low sulfur coals so that we should reduce the amount of SO2 emissions. And we should have desulfurization plants downstream of the boilers, and this also reduces the SO2 emissions. And we should have for the to reduce the SO2 emission, we should have a fluidized bed combustion of coal. And another thing is that we should have very tall stacks in power plants that disperse this ash over a very wide area, reducing the concentration levels to human acceptance levels. So this is for the ash. We should have very tall stacks. And for the NOx emissions, we should have design changes in combustion technology, and this will help us in NOx emission, reducing it. And finally, we should have methods like selective catalytic reactors that should be used in power plants to emit to meet the emission regulations.